Good evening and welcome everyone to the today's Founders Tuesday session. So before we start the session, I request everyone to stay on mute and post your questions in the chat box or raise your hand so we will help to take your question. So now I would like to introduce the speakers for the today's session. So today we have two startups who will be sharing their experience and journey of this startup. Post which we have a startup for the interview session. So this is an opportunity for the participants to interact with the startups and they can ask their questions to the startups. So first, I would like to invite Mr. Yash Nagashet, who is the founder and CEO of C3 MedTech Private Limited. Happy to have you, sir. So over to you to share your experience and success story of your startup, sir.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Sumitra. So I'll just share a brief presentation.
Yes.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, Yash. Could you able to put in a full screen mode?
Yeah, done.
Now it's perfect.
Okay. So, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Yash Nagarshet. I am the founder of C3 MedTech, and we are in the business of developing and manufacturing smartphone-based, portable, and affordable ophthalmic screening devices. And we got incubated at HTIC last year on 16th January. So just to share a few things about my journey. So we started the development in 2017, and we are very fortunate to have mentors who are very well renowned ophthalmologists from our city of Ahmedabad. We are based out of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and they helped us during the whole development, and we started selling the devices in uh, February of 2019 after almost 2 years of development. So basically, what our main focus and what our main reason and problem statement was that majority cases of blindness and visual impairment uh, can be diagnosed at an early stage, so that you can help the person cure of the disease. And major diseases which can cause blindness and visual impairment uh, are cataract, corneal opacity, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, and many more. And the main issue is that currently available devices like slit lamps and fundus cameras, they are meant to be used in the hospital in a clinical setting, and they have been developed for ophthalmologists and trained people to use, and they are very difficult to transport to resource limited locations, and they are extremely expensive. So we decided that there is a very big gap in the market for cost effective solutions which can be taken to any place to conduct the screening. And data and imaging has also become extremely important nowadays. So we decided after a lot of research that the smartphone would work best with such a device, as you can capture images and you can also share the images from the screening location. So we have developed two devices. One is C3 Vision and the other is C3 Fundus Cam. So C3 Vision is a portable slit lamp. So if anyone remembers going to the eye doctor's clinic or eye hospital, you put your chin and the doctor shines a light in your eye. So basically that is the slit lamp. They will observe your eye through the microscope and they will give you the findings. So in addition to a couple of features is basically smartphone based, and it is portable, it is battery operated, so you can take it any place and conduct the screening and even capture images through the smartphone. And the second product is C3 Fundus Cam. It's again a smartphone based device, used to examine the retina of the patient. So you can diagnose diseases like glaucoma, effect of diabetes on the eye, retinal detachment with the help of our device. And currently we are also developing a special attachment. As you can see in the bottom image, we are developing a special attachment for screening retina of premature babies. So again, as you can see, these are the images which we have captured using the device. So on the left, the images are captured through C3 vision. You can see the thin beam of light, which is called a slit, which will give you the cross section view of the anterior segment. And on the right, you see images of the retina, which have been captured during the using the C3 fundus cam. So we are also developing a smartphone app in which you can add the patient information, you can add the location information, and also the person who is conducting the screening. Uh, so our app has a facility of case by case data recording. So this will be very helpful for pre and post surgery or pre and post treatment images. So this is a very helpful tool for doctors and hospitals. Sorry, as they will be able to show the patient the images, and they can convince the patient of the treatment as well, that this is wrong with your eye, and they can monitor the whole disease management with the help of images. And as you can see, like for example, the patient has come to the doctor on 10th July for a cataract surgery, and they come for a follow up on 20th of July. So you can educate the patient as well, uh, with the help of images, that this was your pre-surgical image and this is your post-surgical image. And on the right hand side, the app has a facility of generating a report which will contain the images which you have captured during the examination, with all the patient information and the doctor's information. And the doctor can add comments regarding the disease or any kind of inference which they want to, and this can be printed out and shared with the patient also, for their education, for follow-ups, for hospital records, for many other things. So from a telemedicine point of view, this is what we propose that the devices can be very useful in. So the technician or the optometrist will travel with the devices to the location for screening. And basically the devices can also be set up at smaller centers. Some of the hospitals also do that they have a main hospital in a big city, and they have smaller centers in uh, different areas in and around the city. So the patients can be screened at those locations. The technician can capture images, can conduct the examination, and if there is any doubt, they can share the images with the ophthalmologist, with the specialist, or with the hospital. And after viewing those images, the doctor can give a diagnosis, and they can give any kind of immediate treatment or diagnosis or any kind of further action, that they can even tell that this person needs further investigation or further treatment. You need to ask him to come to the hospital. Or even if it's a very minor thing which can be solved with drops or any kind of other things, so the doctor can tell that as well, that you can, this is not a very major thing, it can be solved with the pair of Ciplox drops also. So what we are placed where we are placed right now is that lot of private and personal practice doctors and ophthalmologists have bought our devices, because the value proposition for the devices being photography equipment is very high. So the currently available equipment is extremely expensive, and it becomes very difficult for the practitioner to invest in such expensive diagnostic equipment. So basically a lot of private doctors have bought our devices, and they use it as a photography device. They take images, they convince the patients of the treatment, and it has been very useful for them. Eye hospitals and charitable institutes, it's a very cost effective device for them who conduct screenings large mass screenings, where they can deploy multiple of our devices to screen eyes of a small village, or even deploy them at smaller centers. And these devices are very useful for eye camps and remote screening, as the technician can travel with them. They are affordable, portable, battery operated, and they can even share the image if there is any doubt with the ophthalmologist who's at the hospital or at a different location. uh, we are exploring this opportunity, but we feel that public health can be a very important sector, that these devices can be deployed at primary and secondary health centers, where they can do basic eye screening using our devices for the betterment and early detection of eye disorders. And from a medical college and institute point of view, these devices can be a very useful teaching tool that can be used by professors and students, just like an engineering lab what we used to have when we were students. So the students can have their own device. They can capture images of the patient for their educational purpose, as well as to explain it to the patients as well. So basically, this is a basic comparison which we have done with existing devices available in the market, and we personally feel that we our image quality is very exceptional, and the value proposition is very high, because some of these devices which are shown in the images, they are more than 15 to 20 lakh rupees. And we feel that we have a very good image quality uh, compared to all these expensive devices as well. Currently, we are Dr. Banker and Dr. Wazirani are our mentors. They have been very helpful. They have been with us throughout the development journey. And what we do is that since the past 1.5 year before COVID came, our mentors used to present about our devices at conferences. So that is how we got into the market, and we participate in ophthalmology conferences. We take a booth over there, we carry the devices, we give live demos to the doctors so that the doctors can use the devices. They can try it out themselves. They can capture images uh, live during their interaction with us, and that has helped us a lot in getting recognition, as well as that has helped us a lot in sales. And our mentors on top of that give presentations. So overall, it's been a very good combination from the presentation and the conference point of view. And we are very fortunate that hospitals like Center for Sight, LV Prasad, Dr. Strauss are our customers at this stage as well. And it's been a good journey so far. And recently in March, we won the BIG 17 grant for further development of our product. So we'll be working on development of the ROP device, the one for the premature babies, and also strengthening our software side with the help of the BIG grant. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Yash. So, the participants, if you have any questions, you can unmute and you can ask your questions to Yash. Hope there is no questions. Thank you, Yash. I think the participants will ask their questions post with the session. So, thank you once again. Thank you, Yash, for
Uh,
sharing your. Yes,
yeah, there's one question, I think, if it's okay.
yes, there is a question in the chat box. So, this is from Avinash Shetty. Is there any issue of the operator error while using the device?
Abhishek, about the question. So basically, with the help of a smartphone you are capturing an image. So if there is any kind of error, so the error would be basically a low quality image, or if the right pathology is not getting captured in the image, because this the diagnosis is going to be based on the image. So once the image is shared with the doctor, or if the evidence of the pathology is seen, so I'll just share the screen with you to show you something, so it will answer your question better. So you guys can see the screen.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so this image which you see here on the bottom right, that is basically there was a corneal transplant and a corneal disease. And as you can see, the pathology is seen. You might see a small cut over here on the bottom in both the images. So basically, the pathology is defined by the image. So there is basically no particular operator error, but the operator error in this case will be the inability to capture a good image, or not capturing the pathology properly. And that can be solved with training, or there are many other ways to do it. So yeah.
Okay, Yash. So basically, like, do you all have like fixtures for these kind of things? So because see, capturing the image, I guess, is the most easiest part. But
Hmm.
like the measurements and so some things need to be specific, right? While taking these images. So do you all have like specific
Yeah, so
fixtures
basically
for?
it's a the device is constructed in that way that we have developed patient supports, so that uh, there is a lot of stability. So as you can see in both these images, so the device is resting on the forehead. This is for the retina, and over here for the slit lamp we have one more rest. It's called a cheek rest. So basically you are resting the patient on this, or the patient is resting their cheek and their forehead on the devices, which will give you stability to capture high quality images.
Yes. So, yes, so I have a question.
Sure.
So, can you share your insights, the process of BIG grant since you have got the last grant? So, most of them are applied for the
Sure.
18th call.
Sure.
So, you can share your insights for the participants on your BIG grant.
Absolutely. So the BIG process began almost 6 to 8 months before actually we got it in March. And the HDIC team was extremely helpful, and I was connected with IKP. It's called Indian Knowledge Park, and I applied through IKP as they are the BIG partner. And just basic insights I would like to share is that I kept everything very straight to the point. And it was a very, I would say, very clean application, uh, very focused, and uh, I knew exactly what I wanted to do if I got the grant. So from an insight point of view, I would just share with everyone that the more concise and the more precise you keep the application, and the more clear your data is, that will be very helpful for you in the initial stages. But when the presentation stage comes, you need to be extremely prepared. You need to know about your competition as well, and you need a lot of evidence. So what I shared with you was just a basic snippet of the comparison which we had done. So for the BIG, I had to do very in-depth comparisons between the existing devices, and based on that, I had to convince the moderators that why this has a very good potential. And the one of the bigger advantages which we had was the user friendliness, cost, and the portability. So that there are existing eye ophthalmology imaging and diagnostic devices available, but the ability of our device to be taken to a different location, the price point, and a less trained technician or a non-specialist, which we refer to as that somebody other than an ophthalmologist could also use it. So those were a few advantages. So I would recommend that you can highlight those advantages as well from your product's point of view. And the main part is how large of an impact will you be able to make with the product. So if you are able to convey these things, then I think you would be in a good position to secure the grant, and keep everything extremely precise and very clean. Focus on talking through more images rather than words in the presentation part as well. So these were a couple of things which I followed, and it worked in my favor. So if you can just keep these things in mind, it will be very helpful to you.
Thank you, Yash. So, is there any questions from the participants? So, I have another question, Yash. So, since you are an entrepreneur, so what helped you to come to this level? So, you can share your insights for the upcoming startups where they can learn from you.
So in the medical field, I think that having good mentors is a very important thing, or having a good partner. So we were very fortunate in that we got very good mentors from the start. So that helped us from the testing point of view, development point of view, and when the actual user is part of your development cycle, it becomes very helpful. So I mean, uh, from my journey's point of view, I think what I can share with you is that if you get, or if you involve someone right from the start, then see, you don't need to wait to get your product to a certain level and then go to someone and then start. Because if you do that, sometimes it doesn't work in your favor, because if your thinking and your users thinking are not matching, then you will be in a very confused state. But I would say, if you have any ideas, if you want to go through this route, then just start sketching out your ideas, start making a prototype. It can be a physical thing, it can be on the screen also, and just start talking to people. And talk to people who are, if you can get a chance. I was very fortunate to get in people very early, but if you get a chance, just talk to industry experts, people who are exceptionally well connected or well respected in your field. And even if you get 5 minutes to talk to them, those 5 minutes will give you so many different ideas, and the suggestions which they will give will be very important. So just to share an insight, that we had a 2 or 3 day development cycle, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we used to do our testing at our mentor's hospital. Then we used to share the images with them. They used to give us feedback. And after that, we used to make all the changes, do a couple of small redesigns, make second version of the prototypes, and do that again. So because we were part of the ecosystem and we had mentors with us from the start, this development was very helpful for us, and it helped us develop the product also at a good pace, because you don't need to wait for someone to give you a reply and everything. So this 1 week cycle method was very helpful for us. So these are a couple of things which you can also follow, that just go out and start testing, start talking to people, which will help you a lot in the development process.
Thank you, Yash, so for sharing your insights. So I thank you for sharing your insights and answering all the questions. So now we can move to the next starter. So Now I would like to introduce Mr. Deepak Patania, founder of Med Intervention and Beyond Private Limited. So happy to have you, sir. So you can share your journey and experience of your startup, sir.
Yeah, hi. I'll just share my screen. One second. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can see my
Yes,
screen
sir. Yes, sir.
without the presenter notes, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. I was doing this for the first time. Okay, hi. Good evening, everybody. I'm Deepak, founder of Med Interventions and Beyond. And I'm happy to be incubating with the HTIC MedTech Incubator at IIT Madras. And for the next 15 minutes, I'll do a presentation about my multi-mask journey with through some slides and 2 videos I'd like to show. And then I also talk about some struggles and learnings. So I'll start with the team that's making it happen. There's Shilpa. Shilpa and I have worked together for almost a decade, and she's helped Multimask get off the ground with the seed capital. She's a wonderful person who's supported me in many of my ideas. Her husband, Dipesh Salgia, who's the director, Shapurji Palanji Real Estate, is also an alumni of IIT Madras and has been my client earlier from some 15 years ago. And after that, he's been a friend and mentor since then. Kanishk, who's my co-founder, is a friend and he's the co-founder. He'll be heading the business using his decade-long experience of commercializing innovation across global markets. Nick is our CFO for our US-registered company by the same name. Mitesh is our manufacturing and supply chain expert who joined the team in August last year and is handling vendors, prototyping, and soon the production as well. And I'm a compulsive inventor and an industrial designer from NID Ahmedabad, and I'm heading the R&D and design. Now for the problem statement and the first 4 months of the development that started in on March 18th, 2020, I'll share the first video for that.
Life, as they say, is immensely precious, a chance and a gift, but we seem to have been taking it for granted. And in the middle of it all, the coronavirus has brought the world to a standstill. We sat in our living rooms observing our frontline warriors and healthcare workers fight against this invisible enemy. It's very clear that this isn't a fair fight. These warriors risk their lives for us, but it has been shocking to see how ill-prepared we are to protect them all across the globe. The mask, whether N95 or the molded variety, showed its limitations. The N95 mask and the surgical mask are disposable and therefore are required in large numbers by every user. This limits their availability and also increases the global waste generation. Since the face also needs to be covered, the solution was to add another new product, a face shield over the mask. Now, most face shields cannot be fit over the molded mask, leaving 2 main options, surgical masks and N95 masks. This makes putting on, removing, and securing 2 items very cumbersome. And those with spectacles have 1 more item to stress about. Also, the wearer's voice now has to pass through the mask as well as the shield, increasing the stress for communication as well. The question is, why should our warriors need to stress any more than they already are? Presenting the Multi-Mask, an invention of a modular mask system that addresses all these issues and is future-ready to tackle many unknowns. Advantages: Multi-Mask can be used as a regular mask with the comforts of an ergonomically designed product, and when required, a shield.
So this video is from June 2020, which you just saw. And with that, we had launched in June last year, we had launched Indiegogo campaign in the US. And since then, the design at that time, the design and development was still on. And we managed to redesign the mask to make it a transparent mask. And since July last year, we've actually been working with a transparent mask. So now the next video will show the development from July till January.
This is how the multi-mask looks now. But when we first launched, it wasn't like this. But it surely was still an amazing invention because of many new things it offered. If you want, you can see that one in the other video called History of Multi-Mask. Anyway, after the launch, the functional feedback was amazing, but aesthetically, it was a fail. Interestingly, our team of 6 product designers had been working on that aspect, as we finalized the design to make the molds. The result was this transparent multi-mask that offers all the same features, but now, it looks good. Let's run through the features. The mask is modular, meaning it is made up of different parts, which can be replaced with if there's some new interesting technological innovations that you would later want to incorporate. The shield can be slipped on and off, when required, and can be adapted to various applications, because you never know when you might need it. Also, the shield won't fog, because the breath is channeled straight out through the mask. Masks with small filters will have a breathability issue, so we tested out and created a large filter. It will also not clog easily as a tiny expensive cartridge would. It's easy to adapt to new specifications like washable filters. Multi-mask is future ready. The filter body can be replaced with other functional accessories like an oxygen mask, electronic filter, AV systems for recording, walkie-talkie, etc. Communication is easier as lip movement is now visible through transparent front. Flat front panel also enhances voice vibrations. And most importantly, the voice bypasses the shield totally. The headband is adjustable for different head sizes. It's easy to put on and remove the mask, with or without the shield, with just one hand. No hassle of strings running around the ears or the head. In the following part of the video, you can see the inventor trying out a prototype created using the process of vacuum casting. The process allows a close simulation of the materials, though the clarity is missing. It's also not the final design version because this is from November 2020 and many changes have been done to the headband and some other parts since then. So it doesn't show exactly how the final product will look like, but it does show how the final product will work.
You can hear perfectly with the shield and without the shield. Even if I take the mask off and put it on, you can make out that the sound or my voice is perfectly audible. So much of the sound comes out because the front part is flat and it behaves like the diaphragm of a speaker. And the shield doesn't cover the front part. In fact, it goes around, if you notice. And that's the amazing part of the multi-mask as compared to the other mask and shield combos where the voice gets muffled. And once we do the proper injection molding, this is the kind of clarity we'll get because this is a polycarbonate sheet.
Currently the multi-mask is in the stage of tooling and dies, and the T1 sampling is scheduled in a few weeks.
Basically, how we thought of it, and while we were looking at what the world was doing, there were thousands of masking solutions that blossomed all over the world in 2020 last year. But most of them, almost all of them, are specific only for the COVID-19 issues. So our aha moment came with this thought that at the outbreak of the pandemic, if there was a mask that was already there with us, which could have quickly adapted to the specifications of this virus, just think how many lives we could have saved. And that became a goal. And what we did is we adopted a systems design approach to develop a mask with an open architecture. So the multi-mask, this is how it looks like now, because since January also, while doing the DFMs, the design for manufacturing, a lot of changes had to happen. This is what it looks like now. The multi-mask is a transparent modular mask that is ready for the innovations of the future, and it comes with an attachable shield. So here are some of the design features. All of them have been covered in the video, so I won't repeat it here, but I'll highlight 1 or 2 points. The filter in our design, the filter is deliberately protected from any direct trajectory of any particle, and it's protected even from the user's own touch. And this improves the filter's efficacy a great deal. And this element that we brought was during the when we had made the blue mask, the earlier mask. We interacted with some surgeons and all that, and with their feedback is this idea that had come, and that's how we had designed it. The modularity of the mask is the most unique feature, and we have filed a patent in April 2020 on that. And it also provides an open platform that can even allow other manufacturers to create their own functional modules for this mask as well. So things like a mask for a high-end mask for a ventilator, we can easily make an attachment for a ventilator and give this mask as along with the ventilator. For key specifications, all materials that we use are FDA approved medical grade materials because we want to sell it all over the world. These material choices ensure durability. They are injection molded, allowing manufacturing at scale. They can be sterilized with most industry methods. The silicone gasket can provide a secure seal with the face and is designed for the 75th percentile head size. And alternate sizes can be insert fitted even by a customer. All we have to give them is what we call the face gasket. The filter itself can be made with any sheet-based material. We are currently now in talks with Professor Sumit Sinha from IIT Mandi, who for his washable filter material that is made of recycled plastics. So it offers better breathability than most other materials that are being used for N95 masks. And it can be washed more than 60 times, making it almost a permanent mask. So we evaluated most of the upcoming masks from all over the world. I mean, whatever was happening, we were checking it out and looking at all the features and during a development process, and are confident that the multi-mask can deliver incredible value to the users. The multi-mask is a comfortable and easy to wear, easy to use all-day mask. It's snug fit, it's attachable, and attachable shield offers an unparalleled protection to the wearer because you can wear it the moment you want it, you can just slip it on, and when you're out of the room, you can slip it off. It's that easy. It helps the wearer communicate better than ever before, and its washable filter minimizes the cost per use. So a little bit about the market. The global market is highly fragmented and estimates are very erratic, ranging from 22 to 50 billion for 2021 alone. But the global shield market is far more organized, amounting to an estimated 3 billion in 2021. Out of this, our serviceable market will be the premium face shield market, estimated almost 50% of the total market. In the first few months of launch, we aim to hit $1 million in revenue, which is around 7.5 crores. As part of our go-to market plans, we will first target the B2B healthcare segment, which is a primary segment for who the mask is designed for. And then we'll expand to the B2B non-healthcare segment. And then if the market opportunity still persists, we will enter the B2C market as well. Dentists are a very big market for our mask because they need something like this even if there was no COVID. And this was explained by one of the dentists that we were consulting in the design stage. He's also there in the video. In India, our mask will be priced at 770 to 800 rupees ex works. This is for wholesale and suppliers, and the retail price will be around 2,000. So our aim is that within the first 2 months of launch, we plan to sell at least 10,000 pieces in the B2B healthcare segment, and then reach 1 lakh unit sales within this first 6 to 9 months. Our average contribution margin is expected to be around 31% at the revenues of 7.7 crores. And if B2C picks up, optimistically speaking, we could potentially hit a sales of even 500,000 units in the first year if we can sell all over the world. Our current stage is that our product development and various stages of prototyping are done. Our design for manufacturing is also done. The multi-mask can be in the market as early as 12 weeks from when the tooling begins. We've received a decent amount of funds and we've reached at this stage now, but we still need a lot more funds to complete the tooling process and build an inventory to start selling. The multi-mask is a winner of the recently concluded CIF Canada Healthcare Innovation Award organized by the Canada India Foundation. And we are actually we are currently a semi-finalist in the big, that $500,000 US Mask Innovation Challenge organized by BARDA, That's the Biotechnology and Advanced Research and Development Authority. As a team, we strongly believe that the multi-mask is like the Leatherman, or some, as some know it, as Swiss Army knife of masks, because it can not only protect us from COVID-19, but also its variants, and can easily keep us better prepared for the future. So with this, I wrap up all the good things that are there about the mask and what we've been doing. And I'll also share 3 slides to throw some light on our struggles as well. Firstly, on the limitations of prototyping. Now, see, we can sell our multi-mask as a COVID mask because it uses certified filter materials, so the efficacy and breathability is not an issue, and it seals the face much better than any soft mask. So the selling the mask is not an issue, but we could have internationally certified it also as a respirator mask as well. But for that, the face seal requires to be perfect, and no 3D printing or even vacuum casting techniques managed to give us samples which could simulate the LSR silicon perfectly. The samples are rubbery, but they are not perfect, so you can't really use them in the field. So the only way to send samples for certifications is once we get the samples from the actual molds. So we are a bit stuck about that. The other issue is the issue of materials and processes, since we decided to keep away from China. So we found it really difficult to get quality vendors specifically for silicon. And almost there were negligible amount of vendors we could find who could overmold complex silicon parts with polycarbonate or polypropylene. So there are many vendors who make silicon housings and gaskets for automobile industry, but it's not the same. We had identified proto mold makers in the US and kept the US company, keeping in mind that we could make the mask there if required. But the COVID anyway has kept us here, and here we are right now. The biggest struggle has been caused by the deception, and this is the main thing, main struggle that we've faced. The biggest struggle that has been caused is by the deception and incompetence. We learned the hard way, and it's the same old story that in India, no one says they can't do something. They will take it up because it's exciting and experiment on your money to learn how to do things. And if you come across an unprofessional one, they will pass on the cost to the clients for the oversights as well. Now, we were the victim of one such situation where they underquoted to take on the project, made us do changes after changes because they were incapable of accessing the molding technology that was required. And then they even hiked up the fees almost 3 times. And eventually we had to step out, and we lost valuable time. I won't name the person yet because we are hoping that he makes amends. But if I think that he could be a danger to more startups, since he's also based in Chennai, I will share the information in writing with IIT so that it's on record as well. Anyway, let me share the lesson that was learned from this. Don't go with a middleman for any kind of multi-tooling, because multi-tooling can be slightly difficult and you would rather one person handle it. But what we have learned, and no matter how convincing the person is, point is never to go with one person. Take the trouble to find specific vendors for each material and process, and trust the vendors who not only say that they can do it, but they can show samples of what they've done, so that only the sample should convince you whether to work with them or not. And that is what we had to do eventually. Now I finally identified 3 vendors in 3 different states who are now prepped and ready to start the tooling. So that's all I have to share for now, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you, sir. So, Miss Suganti is requesting you to share your contact details, sir.
Yeah.
So, I have a question to you, sir. So, since you have 25 years of experience in the design field, so what made you to start a startup, sir?
Okay, very good question. No matter how prepared you are for questions, something new always comes up. But good. So the thing is that when the lockdown started in 2020, the first lockdown, I like everybody else sat at home for the first week, and all through the week what I was doing is watching news, watching YouTube videos, seeing what all is happening, and we're all trying to imbibe what is happening in this world. And because it was happening all over, everybody was affected. And meanwhile, there were a lot of activities that were happening in a smaller scale, where people are making masks, somebody's making shields, and they're giving it to hospitals and all that. And they're really lovely effort all over the country. In Goa, I knew so many people who started making the shields and giving it to hospitals. And they set up small manufacturing unit where they were making thousands of shields a day, and they were giving. And I thought that even I have to do something. So my first reaction was to like join and do something. And that's when when I thought about it more, then I realized that maybe I should try and do something that fits my capabilities. And my capability was design and innovation and all that. So I started trying to figure out what is an item that I could actually work on. And the more I saw the mask and the shield, I realized that actually it seemed very clear by this mess that was happening on the people's faces in the healthcare industry, that nobody had actually thought of a solution that was holistic. I mean, a solution that was, suppose you need a mask, then you wear a mask. What if you need a shield? So you could wear a shield instead of wearing a shield separately. So like when this idea came, and when I started doing a prior art search and try to see whether it's done anywhere, and realized that nobody's actually done it. And that's where the moment we did the prior art search in April, in the early April only, I came up with as in we filed the patent. And by then we had, initially I thought we'll just develop and see. But the more we started working on it, we realized that there is a market, there is a product, there is a need, and there's a patent that we can file. So that's when we decided to start this. I wanted to set up, and I have my investor Shilpa was there, and she said, wow, it's a good idea, I'll put in the money that is required. And Kanishk is a friend who was already into healthcare and already into selling worldwide. So I told him, let's join together. And then that's how we started developing and working together then.
Thank you, sir. So, is there any questions to Deepak, sir, before he leaves from the participants? Yes, sir.
I saw one question. Firstly, thank you, Bharti. The cost of the mask I had mentioned, the cost of the mask will range, the retail cost will range between around 2,000 rupees. And the wholesale cost for hospitals and organizations and NGOs and all that will, this thing cost will range between 700 and 800 rupees.
So, hope that Bharti question has been answered. Is there any question? Yes, sir. So, is there any question from the participants? Thank you, sir, for sharing your contact details. So, thank you, sir. So,
thank you.
So now we can move to the next part of the session called startup interview. So for the startup interview, we have with us Mr. Sridhar and Mr. Sundar from the Ubiquare Health Private Limited. So Ubiquare is one of the top 5 palliative care solutions in the global startup, and they are also continuously helping the home quarantine COVID patients. So happy to have you, sir. So before we move to the interview part, we would like you to introduce you and your team and about your startup. From there, and we will take forward it, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Sumitra. This is Sridhar here, and I think Sundar also has joined in. Sundar is there. So we enable specialty medical care to patients at home.
Hi guys. Yeah.
So we we founded ourselves in 2017, September 28 to be exact. We also incubated at HTIC. I mean, of course, we operate from Bangalore, but we like the healthcare, the group at HTIC, and we wanted to gain from this interaction. So that's how we also got incubated there. We started with the idea of working on how to provide care to patients who are looking for complex requirements. Home care largely has been addressing the need of primary care, and what we understood home care in that time frame was largely nursing driven. There will be some transaction driven. Somebody gives a nurse or caretaker or physiotherapist, but largely whenever there is a situation like cancer or a stroke where a doctor needs to constantly look at it. And post discharge by the patient or the member from the hospital, once he gets back home, there's always this disconnect from the specialist. Some reactions to situation arises, what we call episodes, which requires this patient to rush back to the hospital or rush to somebody else who doesn't know the complete background of the patient. That's where we actually felt that it's better to have a doctor-driven care, and a model of enabling through a hybrid model of physical touch and combining the virtual through a platform is what we have established. And we have seen that need, and we have seen the patients feeling the need, the specialists liking and feeling this need by serving over 300 plus patients with 12,000 days of care. Last year, when the COVID came in, BARAC suggested that why not we basically repurpose the platform for COVID care. And that's when we looked at the fact that yes, the same mechanism of providing this telecare can easily apply for COVID situation too. And we repurposed the platform, putting the COVID protocol or COVID flow into the platform, and repurpose the platform. In the month of August, September, we launched that product, and we have enabled a hospital, St. John Hospital, for enabling COVID care to their patients. We also used the platform to enable COVID care to patients who approached us directly, and that's what we have been doing. Largely cancer care in non-COVID space, cancer and stroke care, and in this space, COVID care.
Thank you, sir. So we can move to the interview part, sir. So my first question is, what are the challenges you have faced for deploying your solution for COVID-19 patients?
See, actually, more than 70 to 80% of COVID-19 patients are mildly symptomatic and can be taken care of at home. So what we have seen during the first wave is, it is more about awareness that it is feasible indeed to take care of patients at home. During that wave, there's been a lot of panic because you don't know what is happening. Patients don't know what's happening. The situation was really a little, when somebody gets COVID, they don't know what is really required to be. And a lot of time addressing that was very, very important. And awareness that indeed it can be taken care of at home was the first challenge in the first wave. Of course, we have established ourselves in providing care to cancer patients or chronic patients, stroke patients, and awareness that UBCare's clinical ability to provide COVID care was also another thing for people to understand at that point of time. And of course, need to embed the COVID protocol and workflow quickly to the platform, even before, although BARAC suggested that, yes, we can repurpose the platform and a grant was indeed put in. We are a startup, we are also having monetary crunch. So we actually, even before the grant money was disbursed, we somehow ate in some amount of money and we put in. So needing to embed the protocol, needed some change in the platform. That was what we faced in the first wave. However, in the second wave, the challenges were a little different in the sense that we was actually swamped with a lot of requests ranging from hospital admissions, oxygen at home, nursing requirements at home, whereas this was all moderate and severe cases. So our call center, I mean, our numbers have been constantly from morning to night was completely busy and we were completely swamped. And at that point of time, we felt, I mean, something needs to be done in terms of how we can actually put in. And so we ramped up our clinical ability to at least advise what is the best course of action. So a lot of these people who actually gave us calls, we were able to support them in actually providing the kind of advice which could help them. The second challenge was caregivers and patients wanted to know if you have a tie-up with hospitals. So we were looking at providing mild care to mildly symptomatic patients. However, there's always this panic. So if something happens, can we really provide this care? And can we connect them and get them admitted to hospital? Because the wave was too fast, too rapid, and hospitals were completely overburdened. So however, it is basically mostly counseling and ensuring that a doctor talking to these patients and giving advice what best we could do is what we actually looked into. And of course, and because the overall numbers being very high, it was impossible to get admission. So even those patients who were mild, but later turned to moderate, they were very difficult to get admission to any place. We somehow managed through a partner network and ensuring that somebody visits home and gives the right intervention at home under doctor supervision. So this was a challenge we faced during this entire first and second wave. However, we also looked into the fact that while we can deliver the care using a platform and a partner network to a certain class of patients, but it's much easier to enable hospitals, like we have enabled St. John. When St. John was able to go and give this care to a larger set of patients, we also felt that it will be easier for other healthcare organizations. And if you can give this platform to hospitals and this Department of Health, it will be much easier to basically get and reach out to larger set of patients. However, selling this concept of care platform-based approach beyond telemedicine needed, and that became very difficult because a lot of solutions came up with WhatsApp and telemedicine. That a care protocol is indeed required and embedded becomes easy for the challenge. And reaching to Department of Health and ensuring that reaching to right decision makers. We have made an attempt to reach to some set of pool of people. However, we have never been able to make into the larger play where people can leverage this platform to indeed provide protocol-based care to a larger set of patients, because we are just trying to provide this as an enablement platform. So these are the challenges we have been facing, first wave, second wave, and in the enablement space.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is, since you are continuously helping to the COVID patients, so what are the major steps that you have taken to help the hospitals during the second wave of COVID patients and the home quarantine patients?
Sure. Sundar, you want to go for it, or should I continue?
No, you continue. You continue.
So actually, in the second wave, during the first wave, as I mentioned, St. John has already used the platform, and we have already modified the care protocol and the care as per their need, also including whatever the Department of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has recommended. So there's already part of the platform. So we actually, using the references from St. John, as well as leveraging the contacts from BIRAC, as well as other incubators, including IKP, including HTIC, we reached to several other hospitals, and we have been able to provide the solutions to 2 more hospitals who are using our service, along with St. John. We're using it to enable COVID care to their patients. So we have enabled at least 3 hospitals, is what we can say. It's not a large number, but this 3 hospitals put together are reaching out to a larger set of patients.
Yes. So, and what are the offerings you are giving to the home quarantine patients, sir?
So we have 2 plans. Primarily, we take care, like I said, mildly symptomatic and mildly symptomatic patients or symptomatic patients. So our plan is it's largely driven by a monitoring plan and a protocol based on what is already implemented in the platform. So a nurse and a doctor put together monitor the patients on a regular basis. So that's the primary care plan. An advanced care plan, we include a specialist also keeps coming once in a while to check on the patient condition. So to this platform network, we have extended care to mildly symptomatic patients. So it's possible that some of these patients are in the verge of getting to moderate, so they require some interventions. So through a partner network of nurses, clinical network, we have sent the nurses under the supervision of doctor to enable and support the right care is given. So several patients have benefited out of this. I think in the second wave, we're taking care of more than 40+ patients. Just the one thing.
Yes, sir. And how your solution is unique when compared to other solutions, and compared to other COVID solutions?
It is protocol based. So we have embedded the protocol as defined by the Department of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of Health. We embedded the protocol, and the protocol is used for leveraging delivery. So the protocol, as part of a set of questions or set of forms, is already put in the platform. Most of the other solution, which is telemedicine or let's say a doctor AV consultation, is the protocol of workflows is implemented outside the platform. Here we already have embedded that. So using that, it becomes much easier to go through the flows, and that's what we have seen. And this is indeed been validated by the hospital and extend the COVID care to the patients. And that I would say the one specific thing which is different. Of course, there's always mildly symptomatic patients, very well defined protocol, but we have actually used the same protocol to be put on a platform to guide both the nurses and the doctors who are taking care of the patients.
Thank you, sir. So as I said, your startup is one of the top palliative care solution in the global startup. So could you able to share your success story and difficulties you have faced during the process?
Sure. Sundar, you want to take that?
No, go ahead.
Right, okay. So actually, just to let you know, this came out as a complete surprise to us. So what has happened is that one fine day we found that the startups insights in the US, based on the survey they have done, they have located and said, okay, you are one of the 5 startups globally among the startups taking care of palliative care. Largely right from the beginning, as we started in our journey, we have been providing supportive care largely to cancer patients and end-of-life patients. And these patients, the way we work, we were referred to us by specialists. We extended the specialist care protocol by assigning a doctor, like I said, is a doctor-driven care, using a partner network. So the care delivered to these patients was always supervised by a doctor, and hence more than 96% of situations or episodes which otherwise a patient would have rushed to hospital, we were able to manage at home. And our doctors were always in touch with the specialists who have referred the patients, keeping the entire continuity of care in loop. So this is what we have largely done right from the beginning since we started this platform. So these patients who receive our services and the specialists who have actually referred this patient have liked the services and have given excellent testimonials. We have leveraged this into our digital media, showcasing what we have been doing, and build awareness against the services on LinkedIn as well as on different platforms. So what I see is that this collective thing which we have put into place and what we have been doing probably has seen attention of Startups Insights, and they said among the startups, and of course in palliative care, a lot of NGOs, a lot of hospitals, a lot of people have been putting in a lot of work over the years. In fact, a lot of people have done excellent work there. So what Startups Insights has actually provided is, among the startups, they've actually recognized us, UBCare, as one of the players providing palliative care, and which is what we have done right from the inception. So that is possibly why we got recognized, and we were glad that somebody picked up and showcased our work.
Thank you, sir. So, so what are the major factors an early stage startup should know when raising the funds and deploying the solution in the field, sir, as an initial startup?
So basically, I mean, there's a lot of, all of our startups have gone through this stage actually. So what we have seen, I mean, is what I can talk about. The thing is that, see, in almost in every place where we make a presentation, and when the people look at a presentation, the primary thing which people are always looking at is basically what is the traction, how can you scale up. I mean, these are two basic essential factors which we seem to be inundated with almost all the questions in most of the places. Of course, rest of all should be there. I mean, there should be the right team. There should be passion and vision with respect to the founders. That you're addressing the right market segment. You should know what are your competition doing. You should be able to define your proposition. You should be able to do all that stuff. But I'm sure all of you guys are already aware of that. But what we have sharply seen is that we are in a market where we are actually making a social impact, and in terms of ensuring that care is delivered at a patient's home, and there is a strong need of that. But while we are doing that, it is very important, and this is the thing which we constantly keep looking at, and almost all investors have been asking us, show us your traction, what is the scale-up plan? And I believe besides having all that, we need to also have a focus on putting this and showcasing this in order to make some dent. I hope I answered your question. Is that what you're looking for? Sumitra?
Yes, sir. So, since we are running out of time, sir, so I will take last question, sir. So, since you are a successful startup, so we need to know from you, how well should a startup form their team, and what are the benefits of having a right team, sir?
I mean, there's nothing, I mean, obviously, without a right team, you can't even make a movement. So obviously, it's very, very important to have a right team. Of course, with the right vision and mission, you need to have, I mean, of course, even among the founding members, you need to choose the right founding members so that you can actually build on top of each other. Sundar and myself, we actually have been working right from my MTech days together. So we know each other very well, I mean, in an extent. So, and the passion we share across. But then you need to have the other founders also in the same tune. So sharing the right vision, right passion, right thing is definitely an important aspect. But besides that, what is important is you need to have all the team with the right kind of strength coming together. So you could have a right product, but then you need to reach the right market. So which means you need a right business development guy to take your connects to actually bring it to have the right connects there. You'll need somebody. I mean, when you actually go and pitch for investment and investment starts coming in, the startup has to have the right compliance and right structures in place. Right processes are required. So you need the right operation guys to actually take it up. So as a founder, you may have some vision and mission, but then you need to have the right team members who can actually support you in actually getting all this together. So compliance is very, very important aspect. You may ignore the later part of it. Having the right operative setup and process is very important. Having the right marketing connects and networking is very, very important. At the same time, incrementally, because all of us are working in some other technology area, having the right technology focus, which incrementally keeps building up, is very, very important. So, I mean, today itself, one of the startup mentioned that you don't need to have the complete product before you actually get into the market. So you need the market connect, and you need to have product development and incrementally go and start from some level to reach to all the full product level. So it's very, very important. Of course, so then if I ask me on that order, vision, mission, right connects, and right person who can put in the process in place to get the compliance and everything else in place.
And also the risk appetite. Very often the founders may have a difference in the risk appetite amongst themselves, right? So that is something that can play a role in taking decisions.
And it takes time. And healthcare takes time. I mean, me is a bit of a technologist. We have been semiconductor embedded space. Since 2017-16, we have been looking at healthcare, and it does take time. So right perseverance is required. So you need to have the team who believe in this vision, preserve and continue focus. It will be very, very important.
I think there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes, sir. We have a question from Saranya. So, Saranya, can you unmute and ask your question? So,
yes, ma'am. Sure.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. Yeah, when we intend to propose a particular product, and if that similar kind of prototype is being formulated as in developed as a product and released in the market, so what are all the strategies that we can have it in ourselves to move ahead with our product, sir? Can you just share your experience on it, sir?
If I understand the question correctly, what you're saying is that you have a product in mind, and then this product is already in the market. So what is the strategy you need to basically have a differentiation?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, see, the point is that when you have actually come with the product, you have come with some intent behind what you're wanting to do. So obviously, there are several ways of approaching and giving a solution. So the point is, when you're coming with the product, even if the product is the same, is the business model different? Or are there some variants into that in which you're actually having a different target segment? Or is it does it satisfy a different value proposition? Is something you can actually always look into. So I mean, if I have to basically connect there, a lot of people working on telemedicine. Telemedicine has always been there. So we never went ahead in reinventing the telemedicine. However, what we actually focused on was the fact that follow-up care was completely missing. Follow-up care to a person at home or away from hospital is missing. So how do you connect the technology of telemedicine or which you now focus into telecare, because care protocols onto a telemedicine platform is also not integrated. So that put together to deliver a follow-up care to a complex to a patient who is suffering chronic illness. How do you enable that entire thing is what became our focus. So you could actually you could actually look into and do something different like that.
Yes, sir. Got it, sir. So finding a novel USP for our product in comparison with the peer competitors would sound well. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
That is a takeaway.
Yeah. And the novel USP should actually translate into compelling proposition, selling proposition for your customer, right? Otherwise, if it's just a USP, then you will probably say, all right, maybe I don't want that feature. It's good for somebody else. But if it translates into getting that person's job done better, or increasing that person's revenue or profit margin, It has to be that compelling, right?
Okay. Okay, sir. Yes.
One could always add bells and whistles and make it different, but that's not compelling enough.
Okay. Okay. Okay, sir. Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saranya. And
Yes.
I thank Sridhar sir and Sundar sir for answering all my questions and the participant question. So once again, I thank three of the startups to spare their time and share their insights with our startups. Sir. So we usually upload our sessions in our YouTube channel. Hope that is fine with you, sir.
Oh,
With,
Yeah, no
absolutely.
problem.
Thank you.
No problem.
with Deepak sir and Yash sir also it's fine, I hope. Okay, sir. So that's it. We came to the end of the session. So on the next Tuesday, we are doing an Ask Me Anything series on scaling. So we will post the next session on the social media. So thank you all the participants to for joining the session and have a good day and thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sumitra, for connecting this so well.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Thank you and bye.
Thank you, Sumitra. Bye bye.
Bye, Yash. Thank you. Bye.